The x-intercept is always where it crosses the x-axis, but it is always written as a point. Remember, all of our points are x, comma, y. If it's an x value that we are finding, our y value makes sense that it should be 0 because we're not going up or down the y-axis. It crosses the x-axis at 2, so the x-intercept is 2, 0. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Again, our points are written as x comma y, but since we're looking for a y value this time, our x value is 0. Again, it crosses at 2, but on the y-axis. So if we look at this problem, our x-intercept, it crosses over here at -4, so it's the point -4, 0. And if you were asked to read that point off a graph, you would know that it's -4, 0. It's helpful to remember that at the x-intercept, y equals 0, and at the y-intercept, x equals 0. But if you're just reading the point, you should understand. Your y-intercept is up here. It's at the point 0, comma 1. So using that information, the calculator can help you, but I know you don't all have calculators and you don't really need the calculator. If you don't want to look at the graph, using the graph will just sometimes help you. But if we know when we're finding our x-intercept that y is equal to 0, I can just substitute 0 in for y into my equation. So 0 equals -4x plus 4, and solve for x. So -4 from both sides. Those cancel. I get -4 equals -4x. Divide by -4 on both sides, and I get x equals 1. So the y-intercept is 1, 0. And then we can do the same, our x-intercept is 1, 0. We can do the same when we're finding our y-intercept because we know that x is equal to 0, so I can substitute 0 in for x. So I get y equals -4 times 0 plus 4. Y equals 0 plus 4, or you could have just skipped that step and known that y equals 4. So this point is 0, comma 4. Same thing here. When I'm finding my x-intercept, I know that y is equal to 0. So 0 equals 3x minus 5. Add 5 to both sides of your equation. You get 5 equals 3x. Divide by 3 on both sides of your equation, and you get x equals 5 divided by 3. You do not have to type that in your calculator and put the decimal down. Leaving it as the fraction is a better answer because it would be a decimal that doesn't end. When we're finding our y-intercept, we know that x is equal to 0. So y equals 3 times 0 minus 5. And you get y equals -5. For all of our y-intercepts, if you recall, when we have a line in y equals mx plus b form, like both of these are, remember this, our b, was our y-intercept. Notice it is the same in both of the problems. So that's another way to pick out your y-intercept without having to do this work if it's a y equals mx plus b equation. So if I look here, my x-intercept, I know that y is equal to 0. Oops, let me move that down for you, make sure you can see it. So I do 0 equals 2x minus 6. Add 6 to both sides. 6 equals 2x. Divide by 2 on both sides. I get x equals 3. So my x-intercept is 3, comma 0. Again, because this is in y equals mx plus b form, that is my b, or my y-intercept, so I don't have to do all that work that I did on the front to know what my y-intercept is. When we do this problem again, finding our x-intercept, y is equal to 0, so I plug in 0 equals -4x minus 1. Add 1 to both sides of the equation. I get 1 equals -4x because those cancel. Divide by -4. X equals, because this is a decimal that ends, you could write it as -0.25, or you can leave it as the fraction. Either choice is fine. Again, we're in y equals mx plus b form, so that is your b or your y-intercept, so you don't have to do the math if you don't want to. The next two problems are technically exponentials. I did not put them on the test because the easiest way to solve for those is if you have a calculator, and I know a lot of you don't have graphing calculators at home, so I'm actually just going to skip them for now because we can work on them when we come back to school. So you can skip 7 and 8 for right now because they're not on the test anyways. Next, we're going to look at evaluating functions. This says let f of x, remember f of x is the same as y, but sometimes they write it like that, telling you what your input value is. So f of x is equal to 3x plus 1. When they're saying f of 4, all they did was replace the x value with 4. So anywhere in your problem you have an x value, you replace it with 4, because they're just telling you that x is equal to 4 to find y. So f of 4 is equal to 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1 is 13. And that's all you have to do there. So same thing over here, they replaced x with negative 2. So 3 times negative 2 plus 1. You can just type that in your calculator if you want to. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. It gets a little different when you do them without just numbers. I'm plugging 4x in 4x. So where I have an x, I replace it with 4x. So you're not going to get just a number answer. There's going to be an x still in your answer. So 3 times 4 is 12x plus 1. 12x and 1 are not like terms, so nothing can be combined, so we leave it like that. Same thing here, f of 2x minus 1. We plug that in where our x is. Here we have to distribute because there's a sign in the middle. There was no sign over here. So 2x minus 1, we get 6x minus 3. Now in this case, we have a negative 3 and a positive 1 that are like terms that we can combine. So we get 6x minus 2 is our final answer here. They can also ask you to evaluate functions off of a graph. This is the most common way the exam does them. So again, it's saying find f of 4. Well, 4 is our x value. So go to your x-axis at 4. This one actually has a point above and below, but remember from inequalities, an open circle means it doesn't include it. So this is the one we want. Our y value there is 1. F of 0, again, that's our x value. So I'm not going right or left on my x-axis at all. I'm going right here. If I go up, I don't hit any lines, but if I go down, I hit the line right here at negative 4. Remember from before we left, if you see f of x, you can change it to a y. So they're saying y equals negative 1, you need to find the x value. So now I'm going to erase what I put on my graph so we can read the graph again. I'm going to go to a negative 1 on my y-axis and see where I touch the graph, and I touch the graph at x equals 6. So that's the answer there. Same thing here, I can change this to y equals 1. So at y equals 1, my graph hits at x equals 4, which we should know from up there. It should be the same thing. Last page, these are old Regents questions with the functions. So again, that's just asking you to find f of 8 based on this function here. So anywhere in your problem that you have an x value, you are replacing it with an 8. Remember, keep your parentheses or your exponent on the outside of your parentheses. So I have 1/2 times 8 squared minus 1/4 times 8 plus 3. If you have a graphing calculator or downloaded the app, you could put all of that in your calculator at one time. I'm going to do it out for you in case you don't have a calculator. Remember, exponents first, so I have 1/2, 8 squared is 64. I'm going to multiply these two together first, so 8 times 1/4 is 2 plus 3. Now I can do half of 64 is 32. 3 plus 2 is 5. 32 minus 5 is 27, so it's choice 3. This one here, just like that last one, when you're reading the graph, what is the value of f of negative 3? That's our x value, so on our x-axis, go over negative 3. If I look down, I would never hit my graph. If I look up, I hit my graph there, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it's multiple choice number 1.